I believe that this tool should be used in every Axis and Allies game where it's allowed. Hey everyone, the Good Captain here, and welcome to another video in my In Defense of series. Today's controversial topic is battle calculators. Should they be used in Axis and Allies or not? And I'll get to my position shortly, but first, if you play Axis and Allies online, or at least play on AAA, this video will be incredibly boring for you. Axis and Allies players who play strictly online, at least through AAA, use battle calculators in all of their games. It's really not even a controversy. So with those players, I'd say just stop watching the video now. It's not going to be that interesting for you. But for everyone else, let me start with a quick definition. What is a battle calculator? Well, my definition of a battle calculator is any app or program in which players input the amount and type of attacking and defending units in a given battle prior to rolling any dice. The calculator then resolves that battle, usually in the ballpark of 1,000 times, and spits out the results in the form of a percentage for victory, draw, and defeat based off of that sample. So a good calculator will also tell you the average number of units left at the end of the battle as well. So the pros of using a battle calculator are that it makes a player less likely to engage in battles they'll lose, and more likely to engage in battles that they'll win. So the argument against their use is usually something like, well, this just removes a big part of the fun factor from the game, or it acts like a chess engine, giving you the right moves. Instincts, experience, and just plain guts and luck are what make the game so interesting, and a battle calculator would just eliminate all of this, so you shouldn't use one. Okay, so I wasn't sure what the reaction from the face-to-face community would be. In other words, I didn't know if this topic would be controversial to them. So I polled them. I polled on a couple of different Axis and Allies Facebook pages, and the results were overwhelmingly that they do not use battle calculators. So now that I know the lay of the land, here's my argument. I have three main arguments as to why, and the first two points in my argument are fairly straightforward, so I'll be able to go through those pretty quickly. The third point is a little bit nuanced, so grab a Red Bull and strap in, because here we go. My first point is just to shine a light on the fact that there are many war games, and really the vast majority run on much more comprehensible dice probabilities. Just one example, this is a module for a game system called Advanced Squad Leaders. This is a very big, has a very large following, much larger than Axis and Allies. This game is far more complicated than Axis and Allies, yet the dice, there's just 2 dice. In 90% of the resolutions of combat in this game system, it's run off of 2 dice and what happens when you roll them. So if you understand kind of the probability effect of 2 dice, then you don't need a battle calculator. And so many war games are like this. It's really unique to Axis and Allies, where you can have battles where the dice are just crazy. The amount of dice is just crazy, or the complexity of the dice, I should say. So let me give you another quick example. This is Panzer General. This is a very successful computer-based board game that was released in 1994. It runs with much more complex dice equations, but rather than put that burden on the player to solve those equations, the battle calculator is installed in this game that gives you the probabilities expected before going into a combat. And the game uses a beautiful analogy that I really like, and it likens you to the general, and the battle calculator is just your general's staff, giving you the best estimates of what they think is going to happen before they go in, and leaving the decision up to you. And I just think that is such a perfect analogy, because and I think this is where the chess engine analogy fails, because a chess engine, there's no dice in chess, so there's no luck whatsoever, so that would be cheating. But with dice, the battle calculator is just giving you an estimate, and it's up to you, the general, so to speak, to make the final decision. And there are times when you will want to attack at a disadvantage or defend at a disadvantage. And if you've played a lot of Axis and Allies, you know what I'm talking about. This leads me to my second reason to always use a battle calculator, and that is the probability of victory or defeat exists in any battle, whether you want to know it or not. My analogy here is Galileo and his telescope. I know this sounds a little weird, but Galileo was the first to, I think the first to see the moons around Saturn. And the clerics didn't want to even look through his telescope when he told them this. But that situation existed whether they wanted to look through that telescope or not. And I'm using this analogy here because when you inject this into the Axis and Allies game, I feel like there's an element of who is less ignorant when it comes to dice and the probabilities, and this gets exacerbated the more dice you roll or the more complex the battle is. And to me, this is just not the most fun way to play the game, which leads me to my final and most nuanced point. Reason number 3 to always use a battle calculator in Axis and Allies when you can is that it makes you a much better player much faster. First, let me say that I'm not saying somebody who's played Axis and Allies since the 80s and has this vast experience is a weaker player because they don't use a battle calculator. Okay, I'm not saying that at all. Not at all. So let me go into this though. So it can do this in a number of ways. It can make you a better player much faster in a few different ways. First, after just a couple of games, if you only ever played 2 games using a battle calculator, you will helplessly commit to memory the exact percentages of very common attack and defense combinations and their outcomes. So for example, we all use blockers, okay? Again, this video shouldn't be for the beginner, but if you know what I'm saying when I say a blocker, you know that's 1 infantry. I can't not know what the exact odds are, not only of victory or defeat if I attack with 1 fighter and 1 infantry against that blocker, I also know the probability that my infantry will survive across multiple rounds of combat. So anybody who says, well, that's just so simple, all you have to do is add the fractions and come up with a decent probability and understanding, well, it gets a little tweaked when you use a battle calculator and you really understand it in depth. That is round to round. One of my favorite little examples of this is what happens when a submarine attacks a cruiser. So a submarine attacks at 2, cruiser defends at 3. Just very quickly, think about what you think it might be. The answer is that this is exactly 50-50. This really is the biggest, coolest little thing. Like, even though the sub attacks at a lower value than the cruiser defends, because of the first strike ability, submarine brings that probability up to 50-50. If you want more examples of this, or you think this argument doesn't hold water, you should definitely check out the link in the description box below. It's a cool video, again by Corporal Clegg, but he just does such good work, and it will really test your ability to use your brain as a battle calculator. So go check that out and you'll completely understand this argument that I'm making. At any rate, these probabilities are helpful to know because no matter what version of Axis and Allies you're playing, the different interactions, the common interactions on the board will help you in the rest of your Axis and Allies career if you commit them to memory. Another example of how a battle calculator makes you a much better player much faster is that it eliminates what I call the false positive effect. And to demonstrate this, let me give you a very oversimplified example. Very quickly, if 8 infantry are attacking 4 infantry, the probability of a success for the attacker in this scenario is 88%. But if the defender won, if you're playing a game and suddenly the defender won, that's to say that this occurrence that happens 12% of the time actually happens in a game, newer players, or even sometimes experienced ones, might come away with the impression that 4 infantry actually can stand up to 8 infantry. This is the false positive. So a bad strategy is actually being propagated in the minds of these players who don't completely comprehend what just happened there. In other words, this is if you've ever had the experience of feeling like, God, that guy got so lucky, and the other guy says, that's not luck, that was me, that was skill. Okay, this battle calculator is dispense with that immediately. And I have a personal example I'll share with you at the end of this that will really hopefully ram that home. So that was an oversimplified example. You can increase the complexity of a battle until it's outside of anybody's true understanding of who might win or lose. Again, check out Corporal Clegg's video, but using a battle calculator eliminates the false positive. You will know if you got lucky, you will know if he got lucky, you will know what happened in the battle. There will be no mystery, and you will have no false positives. And finally, the third and final point to why this makes you a better player much faster is that it helps players discern good strategy from bad strategy. Very quick example, if you're developing a first turn game plan as Germany and anniversary, let's say, and it consistently requires that the Russians need to lose a battle that they have an 80% chance to win, it's time to change the strategy. In other words, it really helps serious players finally hone their tactics and strategies and playbooks and game plans, okay? So just to clarify this point, I'll share a personal experience of mine. In 2018, I spent a lot of time in my playgroup just really, frankly, play testing the heck out of Classic, as crazy as that sounds, coming up with strategies for the Allies and the Axis. And then I took them online to run through the gauntlet of online play. And Japan took over Moscow. An opponent I was playing said, "You got so lucky when you took over that capital." And I said, "That wasn't luck. I earned it. I wanted to do that, and I attacked, and I did it, and I got what I wanted, and that was my plan." And then his response was, "Well, the battle calculator said you had an 8% chance of success." And I said, "What's a battle calculator?" So he showed me. I immediately realized the error of my ways, and I chucked that plan, went back to the drawing board, and I came up with what is probably my most proud accomplishment, a video titled "Waltzing in Sunny Skies," which gives really, in my opinion, a very strong opinion, durable and reliable Axis strategies to be used in Classic. So anyway, so those are my arguments. Just a very quick recap. Reason number one, historical precedents. Most board games don't overtax the players with numbers the way this game does. So in my opinion, it's not necessary for the enjoyment of the game to have to crunch numbers like this. Reason number two is that the probabilities of victory or defeat exist whether you want to know them or not. I like to play against the best version of my opponent's strategy, and the only way to truly do that is to allow the use of battle calculators. Three, a battle calculator makes you a much better player, much faster, and I went through 3 reasons why that is. So that's my argument, but before I completely sign off out of this video, I have to cover a couple things. One, low luck dice. Certain people will probably be thinking, well, if he likes to use a battle calculator so much, why not use low luck dice? Well, I don't actually, for a number of reasons, but that I might cover in its own video. But suffice to say, I don't really like to use house rules. I like to play out of box and really uncover what the game designers had in mind. Low luck dice is a house rule, and I'll just leave it at that. Don't really like using house rules. Whereas in comparison, a battle calculator is, again, just a tool. It's just a window into looking into what is, whether you want to know it or not. Finally, despite this impassioned argument I've made about using battle calculators, I will say, beyond a reasonable doubt, I do not care if we use them or not. Yes, I said it. If we're playing face-to-face and we agree to use them, great. If we agree not to use them, fine. Why am I saying that? Well, it still makes things even. We've just added in the element of, who's better at knowing what the dice will do and how dice work, especially over prolonged combats. So with that, I will close this video. Let me know what you think about battle calculators in the description box below. Thanks for watching this. All the best from the good captain, and bye-bye.